Welcome, aspirants. Today, we're diving into a really crucial topic for your GS Paper 2 syllabus, and it's something that's shaping the very future of work in India. We're talking about the decline of trade unionism.
Exactly. You see images like this one from Noida with recent labor agitations, and it really brings the role and relevance of trade unions right back into focus. This makes it a very, very probable topic for both your mains and your interview. So, to really understand this complex issue properly, we've structured our discussion into 5 key parts. We'll kick things off with the current context, then look at the history of unions, analyze why they've declined, see what that means for workers, and finally, look at the new labor codes and what lies ahead. Now, you might be asking, okay, but how does this directly connect to my syllabus? Well, think about it. This topic plugs right into key areas of GS Paper 2, like pressure groups, formal and informal associations, and, of course, policies for vulnerable sections. So understanding this is absolutely essential. That's a great point. So let's step back a bit and trace the journey of trade unions in India. To really understand where they are today, we need to know how they got here. The story of trade unions in India is really a tale of 2 eras. Before 1991, in the state-led economy, unions had significant clout. But after the LPG reforms, that's liberalization, privatization, and globalization, the entire landscape shifted, and we began to see a steady decline in their power. And today, well, they're facing a whole new set of challenges. And that decline has led to this number, just 6.3%. The data paints a really stark picture of just how much things have changed. And if we break this down, the picture gets even clearer. The penetration in the private sector, which, let's be honest, is the engine of job growth, is alarmingly low at just 1.8%. That's a huge segment of the workforce with very little collective bargaining power.
Right. And this brings us to the real core of our analysis. This is where you can build a fantastic mains answer.
To tackle a question like this, you need a solid framework. The best way is to look at it from 2 different angles, the behavioral and the structural causes. Think of it this way. Behavioral factors are about what happened inside the unions, while structural factors are about the pressures from the outside. So, the behavioral argument, which scholars like King Shiksarkar point to, suggests that unions were partly their own undoing. We're talking about internal fragmentation, deep ideological splits, and a real failure to reach out to the massive, growing number of contract workers. But then you have the structural argument. Scholars like Freddie K. Thazat would say, hold on, it's not that simple. They argue that the decline was due to a broader economic attack on the working class, especially through policies like the privatization of public sector units, which directly eroded the union's power base. And of course, beyond those 2 big arguments, there are other important factors. The rise of outsourcing and contract labor has made organizing workers much harder. Deep political ties have sometimes led to mistrust. The shrinking public sector meant a smaller traditional union base, and even the perception of unions among younger workers has changed. So all this analysis is great, but what does it actually mean for the average worker on the ground? Let's talk about the very real human cost of this de-unionization. Well, the result is pretty clear. We've seen a definite deterioration in labor standards. Wages have stagnated in many sectors, and there's been a massive shift away from secure, permanent jobs towards more precarious, non-standard forms of employment. Now, the government's answer to this has been the 4 new labor codes. The official line is that they simplify laws and boost the economy. But there is a lot of debate, and critics see them as a contested path forward, potentially weakening worker protections even more. Let's look closer. One of the biggest changes is right here, the threshold for forming a union. Under the old 1926 Act, just 8 workers coming together could register a union. Now, under the new Industrial Relations Code, you need at least 10% of the workers in a company. Just imagine trying to get that number in a massive factory. It makes organizing much, much more difficult. The codes also formalize something called fixed-term employment. Now, on paper, it says these workers get similar benefits to permanent ones, but critics argue this is a step beyond even contractualization, creating a system where employers can hire and fire more easily, which could further weaken worker security. So, for your way forward in an answer, these are the critical challenges you must highlight. How do we formalize India's huge informal sector? How do we create good jobs for people moving out of agriculture? How do we make sure even the existing laws are properly enforced? And, very importantly, how do we shift a conversation from a mere minimum wage to a real, livable wage?
And that brings us to the fundamental question we want to leave you with. How does India strike that delicate balance between protecting workers' fundamental rights and driving industrial growth? A well-structured answer, one that considers both the structural and behavioral aspects we've talked about, is what will really set you apart. All the best.